Good afternoon, everyone, as you're joining us. For those of you that are coming in, we're going to give everyone about an extra minute, and then we will get started with our webinar for today. Okay, we are a minute in. I definitely don't want to waste your time. We want to get started. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you to the EHCMA Beating the Heat Medical Insights, Hydration Tools, and Safety Strategies webinar. I'm Holly Kurth. I'm the Communications and Public Affairs Manager for EHCMA. And if you aren't familiar with us, just so you know, we are a coalition of association representing more than 120 chemical manufacturing plants in the Gulf Coast, Houston area. The EHCMA mission is to deliver value to our members with health, safety, environmental responsibility, and economic growth in mind. And we do this by creating opportunities for best practices and best practice sharing. And this webinar is an example of that. We deal with heat, year round, really, in our area. But of course, hydration is imperative in all temperatures and situations. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our three subject matter experts on the panel today, including Richard Bass, who is with Carrare. He's the Eval and HSCS PSM manager, and he is the EHCMA Best Practices chairperson. Then we also have Dr. Tommy Heisler, and he is the Chief Medical Officer at the Health and Safety Council, where he oversees the occupational health services across its multiple health center locations. And then we also have Monica Baynards, and she's the Executive Director with Coastal Ice, who introduced the industry to a hydration meter as an incredible tool to prevent dehydration. Now, before we get started, just so you know, we will be recording this webinar and it will be posted on the EHCMA website for members. And we will also take questions or have a question and answer period at the end. You can type it into the comments section. And if we don't have time to answer them all, we will get back to you and send emails out to everyone on the distribution list for this webinar. So let's get started. First off, I'd like to start with Dr. Heisler. And as an occupational medicine physician, how often do you treat heat-related illnesses?
Sure, it's a good question, and I appreciate EHCMA having me on today to talk about this. We talk about it every year, right? And it's a very important topic. And unfortunately, in our health centers, we see these types of illnesses all throughout the year, every year. It's one of those things that just keeps, showing its ugly face every hot season, especially. We all live in the South, most of us on the call, right? And it only gets cool here for a few months, and even then you can still have these illnesses because not everybody works outside, right? And not everybody works inside. You can certainly be working at near a hot boiler inside when it's 30 degrees outside and still get that heat stress from that boiler. So unfortunately, it's something that we constantly see at our health centers, even when it's not 100 degrees outside like it feels today.
Gotcha. Thank you. Monica, I'd like to jump over to you and ask, because Coastal Ice and Water is a job site hydration provider, how do you go beyond just providing the products to include safety education and awareness on heat-related incident prevention?
Yes, and to echo Dr. Heisler, thanks for putting this together. It is one of those things that I always say, like, from a safety standpoint, it's one of the only things that you have completely within your control, right? Like, you control kind of what you are preparing your body. So really that, right? So by the time you're seeing Dr. Heisler and his folks, you're probably in a bad position. Richard's got that unique ability that he's kind of have to oversee what programs look like. We get to kind of bring the education aspect to it. So the practical part, right? Like, what are you doing to prepare your body for work? You wouldn't, I use a lot of practical analogies when I'm doing toolbox topics with 6 a.m. safety meetings, or, you know, the stand downs at 1 p.m. And, you know, how are you getting prepared for the day? The same way would you leave on a road trip with, you know, your gas tank on E and all of your check engine lights on? Probably not. Why are you coming to work with, you know, no substance in your body, no hydration filling you? So that's really kind of the safety aspect. And because my product is right in that wheelhouse, what I do, like, I think as a partner of industry, like, I got to think outside the box. I got to seek different ways to educate them on that part.
Gotcha. Thank you. Richard, then that definitely leads into you from your perspective as a safety professional. What role do you play in turning medical advice basically into action when you're actually on the ground right there?
No, that's a great question because that's one of those things in working with someone like Dr. Heisler, you know, whether it's medications that could affect, you know, hydration levels, you know, or even like I have a discussion I had with him the other day. You know, there's a lot of people doing weird things now, like fasting. You know, who wants to fast when it's 100 degrees outside and you got to go to work and you haven't eaten in 2 days? That's probably not good for you. So those are those things to get that advice from people, from your medical providers, knowing what things to look out for, educating your people based on the medical directives from our, you know, our medical providers. I think that's very important to have that link to where we're giving the most up-to-date information to our people and coming from those medical providers.
Dr. Heisler, you may have more than to say on that, but that's kind of what I was wondering too, is what's the biggest prevention measure that you deal with to reduce the number of heat-related illnesses? And, you know, we have some other things to look at like that with fasting and other, you know, things, the outside effect so that people are putting on themselves. You know, what can be the biggest prevention measure?
Yeah, you know, the biggest prevention measures are still the tried and true water, rest, and shade. You know, those are the three key fundamentals of preventing your body from getting dehydrated and heat stressed. Now, the difficult part of that is understanding what success looks like with water, rest, and shade. It's easy just to say, hey, drink water, right? But that's the least we can say to our workers, right? It's how do you be consistent and strategic with the implementation of water, rest, and shade? How much water do you need to take in, right? How much do you need to be in the heat versus out of the heat during a work shift? Those are the pieces that are not always clearly defined. And it's when we try to guess and just assume that everybody's equal, everybody's health is the same, everybody came to work with a full stomach, right? And well balanced and well nutrition and a good balance of breakfast. It's when we assume those things that we oftentimes end up with that heat related illness because we assumed, right? And when you assume things, that's when problems happen.
Absolutely. Monica, you may be able to talk on this a little bit because or when we've seen examples of proactive hydration and safety training like you were discussing and the things that we've grown up knowing, but what helps prevent accidents or illnesses on a job site?
Well, and I think, you know, like, obviously, and just to kind of go back to what Dr. Heisler just said, you know, you can say it, but implementing it in your culture, right? Like, you can say, oh yes, rest, do this, but are you providing it? Are you incentivizing them to utilize it? One of the things that I talk about a lot is, how do we measure dehydration, right? Okay, so and it's fun because I get to ask that in my big, you know, group of, you know, 100 plus, you know, guys and girls, and they're like, oh, you know, bright orange urine, you know, okay, yeah, okay, and then you're thirsty, and also, so the all of these indicators we've been taught to measure, you're already there, right? You're reacting to something. And so I use a very practical example. You don't climb a structure and then put on a harness and tie off at the top of the structure. Like, you prepare, you get your JSA before you go do a job. Like, that's how hydration needs to be looked at. And so super transparently, again, a lot of what I want to do is everyone else has this plethora of things. Safety professionals are looking at everything, right? Like, this is in my wheelhouse. How can I bring the education to them? And so at a safety conference, I saw a meter that helps measure your hydration. And so it takes your salivary osmolarity, which is essentially like the density in your saliva. And that is about as technical as I can get into that. You'll have to defer to someone who's much more, but it really just measures your saliva. It's a very quick, non-invasive, like, single test strip that measures it. But we've seen success with that because it's one of the only ways that you can check it before you're there, right? And so I know, and I think Richard can speak to this. We've seen a lot of success on the job sites with gamifying that. They're shifting the culture of drink water, rest, to, okay, well, who thinks they're the most hydrated and can utilize that? And I'll let him speak on that. But I think a lot of it is just thinking outside the box and shifting your culture. We can say we care, we can say we do all of this, but how are we showing our people and getting them involved in that? So teach it up, Richard. Talk about the meter.
Two different things, even Richard, two different things on that then too. If you talk about the data or the trends you've seen in that hydration meter, and then even more on how you're using it and what it means, whether it's gamifying or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, in the beginning when we first started looking at this, what kind of trends were we expecting to get out of it versus what we actually got out of it? So being able to, like she was talking about, using it as a leading indicator. So when we first started using it, we saw where people didn't recognize that they were actually getting into those danger zones. Because again, every other technology we had before, which it wasn't technology, it was just when you would actually go to the restroom and you'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, I need to drink some water, to actually being able to see and recognize even before you're thirsty. Like you might not even be thirsty and the meter's telling you you're moderately dehydrated, but one of the things that we saw the first year that we implemented it, we started seeing those hydration like danger numbers going down, even getting into this time of year where we started it in May and June, and the recognition and the use of it, where people started recognizing and being more aware of their hydration because of this process, that we started seeing lower numbers of people that were dehydrated, even in August, than we did in June. So that was something that we saw a win there. But then talking about the gamification of the hydration, right? How do you get people to want to use it? Because that was probably the toughest. That when we were talking with our corporate team, and we were like, you can't force people to use it. No, you want them to want to use it, right? And what better way than turning it into a game? Because people like a little bit of competition. So the way we found to do it was you take a work crew, 4 to 5 people working on a work crew, and you would test all of them. Whoever was the most hydrated out of that group got a prize, and then got to put their name in for a potential for a bigger prize at the end of the month. Well, now they started getting competitive with each other, and it started actually, that's what, really started triggering it, where now, we walk down down through the process units, and people are actually waving us over to come do, hey, come check our hydration, come check our hydration. They're prepared for it, which is good because now it's one of those situations where they're aware. Is it for selfish reasons, maybe? Because maybe they want a prize? I don't care. All I know is that hydration awareness has been a huge improvement at our site, and we're able to actually run trends on it. We actually started looking at it in different ways, like where we see even throughout the day, what parts of the day were we seeing people that were more dehydrated. And typically we saw people that were more dehydrated in the mornings and then right after lunch. But once they got out there in the unit and, with the water stations and actually working and performing, their hydration was coming back around. Well, we started thinking about that. Well, what are they doing before they work? Drinking caffeine, drinking coffee, things that are diuretics. Maybe they took their medication which again, that is something that, has a direct effect depending on the medications. And then at lunch, having a big meal, maybe drinking a Coke or an energy drink I don't know why people still drink those, but, things like that we started seeing. But then, later in the afternoon, the hydration levels would come back up because they're focused on that hydration again. So you're actually, the system itself can give you so much information because it's a digital resource. You can, it's got an app that you can get all your information from. It's been a game changer for us, and I use that, no pun intended, but but gamification of anything you do with safety usually works because we're all a little bit competitive.
Sorry, Dr. Heisler, I kind of have two questions really for you to kind of follow up on those things.
Sure.
First of all, we stress that water intake
Yeah.
a lot, but people still get heat sensitive and they're heat stressed or dehydrated. So I wanted to talk about actually hydrating the employees effectively, and if that includes electrolytes or what else do we need to do or can we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hydration is one of those water, rest, and shade key fundamentals, right? And so when I see a heat illness in my clinic, I always ask the person two questions, right? Number one, how much water have you been drinking, right? And then number two is what I think is even a more important question is, when's the last time you went to the bathroom? Because inevitably the answer to number one is doc, I've been drinking water all day. Bottles of water, bottles of water. I've been drinking tons of water. I know I'm hydrated. But then the answer to number two is, well, now that I think about it, the last time I went to the bathroom was 6 hours ago when I woke up at my house. So that tells me immediately the amount of fluids that's going in is still not enough for that individual person. Because what should be coming in should be coming out. And if it's not coming out, it means that that person is not drinking enough, and all the water that is going into their body is most likely just being sweated out, not going to the kidneys where it needs to be, not going to the brain where it needs to be. And that's why you start to have problems. And I always like to say it's nice to have those urine color charts posted all over the bathrooms, but if nothing's coming out, there's no color to look at, right? So I always emphasize to employers and employees, yes, we want to overemphasize water because without water, you're going to die, right? In electrolyte replacement. But just as important, if not more important, for that worker to be monitoring throughout their work shift is how often they're going to the bathroom. Because if they're drinking 2 bottles of water every hour, at least 1 bottle should be coming out every hour. So it's when you realize that you haven't gone to the bathroom, that's when you should be self-reflecting and thinking, well, I must not be drinking enough. Even though I feel like I'm waterlogged and drinking more than I ever do, if it's not coming out, it's not going in your body where it needs to go, and you have to do even more.
Do you have some tips on what employees can do to make sure people are getting enough water or electrolytes, anything like that?
We know medical studies, right? And so a baseline amount of water, and something that OSHA is suggesting in their new proposed heat standard, is a quart of water every hour, and which is about 2 bottles of water every hour. That's just a baseline, right? For the average Joe. The worker that may be 18 years old and fresh out of working at Walgreens the day before might need double that, right? Or the worker that's 70 years old and on 17 different medications may need triple that amount. But drinking that 2 bottles of water every hour is a good place to start. And then that employee should be monitoring how much is coming out in the bathroom. And if it's not a lot, or if it's none throughout that hour, they need to be drinking more. So I think that's a good first step for employers to emphasize to their workers is, number one, you need to be drinking at least 2 bottles of water an hour at minimum. But also along the way, if you haven't gone to the bathroom in that hour, you need to stop, rest, get to some shade, and drink more fluids until you do go to the bathroom. Because again, if that worker is not urinating, they are on the road to having a big problem. So emphasizing the water intake, also emphasizing that the employees need to self-monitor how much of that water is coming out.
Monica, can I go over to you on this to
Yeah.
talk about, you have that role basically of being a hydration provider, but also educating, workforce and all.
Yeah.
So how can you help with that, preventing illnesses and a single takeaway even on, how you work with people and how job sites can implement more of this?
Well, and so I mean, I feel like I'm pretty fortunate because if I'm talking to you, you probably care about this kind of stuff, right? And so I get, like I said, like if our customers, if you will, they care about this. This is important to them. They allow us to come in and really help educate that. But yeah, I mean, we see from not only the doctor's advice, but like we see from sales trends and manpower. We look at that and we see, yes, like this time of year in peak seasons, like 8 to 10 bottles per person per day, right? That's what you need to be consuming. Electrolytes are a really important part of that too, because you are sweating out all of that. And keeping that, I call your body the car, the gasoline is your water and your hydration, and then the electrolytes are the battery, the spark, right? Like you can have a fully souped up, fully loaded, brand new car, full tank of gas, but your battery's crap, like you're not going anywhere. Same thing, like it is truly like a balance. But yeah, I mean, educating on that, I think too, and Richard kind of hit on this, and I'm sure Dr. Heisler can add to it, but we've got a workforce, we've got like a culture right now that is very familiar with like what GLP-1s are. GLP-1s of all the different, they don't make you hungry or thirsty. So these triggers that we've been conditioned, oh, like when you're thirsty, you need to drink, like you're not getting those triggers because of this. Something big that I recognize with myself too is we are headed into the lovely fall season, which is allergy time for Monica. I'm absolutely miserable. And so I take a decongestant. That is drying all of this up, but it's drying other, you know what I mean? And so even just educating them on, hey, what over-the-counter medications are you taking? You know your diuretics, you know your prescriptions. I hope that you're talking with your doctor on what that looks like. But what about the over-the-counter stuff, right? So just kind of bringing those things to the forefront. And I think I actually heard Dr. Heisler say this, and the visual. I'm a very visual person, right? There's two really big aspects, like the external. We cannot control the sun, the heat. We have no control over that, right? And that's the rest part of when we talk about this. What we can control is our internal body temperature and resting, relaxing, and rehydrating, keeping that cool. But as we move out of the heat that triple digit feels like, it honestly becomes a little bit more dangerous because we're less inclined to take on those 8 bottles of water. Our job sites, our customers that are only implementing summer of safety type big water pushes, they kind of stop when you get into turnarounds and you're busy doing other stuff. So keeping it as truly like in a cultural shift year round, you need to be thinking about this. You don't just gas up in the summer. You got to do this all year round. So yeah, I think those are sort of like the practical approaches to what are you do, like, think about this. Our biggest thing is we can bring a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. Like you can provide all of the things, but you can't force your people to take personal responsibility of that. And I like to come in and say, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Are you thinking about this kind of stuff?
I have so many questions, and the three of you have such great information. So forgive me if I jump around a little bit. On that, I was going to say, Richard, can you talk a little bit about, we discussed the medication awareness, and I know we'll go to Dr. Heisler too, but heat stress medications, obviously they don't go together. How do you make sure your employees are educated about some of the risks and that y'all are paying attention to them too?
No, that's a good point. I mean, that's something that we all have to do is, people forget, They don't think about it. And maybe it's a new medication they just got put on, and then they turn around, they go to work, and it's up to us really as safety professionals to make sure that people are aware of those things. We do training on it. We do little email notifications, but we do our toolbox meetings, but we actually print off lists of different drugs and over-the-counter drugs more than anything. But we encourage all of our employees when we talk about it in those either shift starter meetings or toolbox meetings, whatever you want to call them. But we encourage them to talk to their medical providers, talk to the pharmacists. If you're getting, each one of when you go get a medication, it comes with all this information. But how many of our people actually have those conversations with their pharmacist or with their medical provider? Hey, doc, I work outside. I work in a heat stress environment. What is this medication? What kind of, effect is it going to have on me, as I go to work tomorrow or next week? So those are those kind of things that it's really up to us to make sure we keep engaged with our employees and help them understand. It's, like Dr. Heisler was talking about, the rest, shade, drinking water, resting and shade, all those kind of things. But making sure that we're having those conversations with people, knowing what you're putting into your body and what the effects it has on you with heat stress, because everybody's different. There's so many medications. I mean, if you think about it, 20 years ago, I'm getting older, but I'm definitely on more medications than I was on back then. But even today's generation, we see more of the young people coming into our workforce that are on more medications than people were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, things like that. But we need to make sure that people understand the risk, that they have with those medications and their hydration levels.
Dr. Heisler, are there any medications that you think, or any different things that people maybe overlook sometimes, a certain type of medication that maybe they need to, even remind employees, hey, just remember if you're taking, not trying to ask for their personal information, but hey, if you're taking this, remember you might suffer from some extra issues when it comes to hydration.
Sure. Any medication has a side effect, right? Anything, Tylenol, right? Tylenol can put you in liver failure. Any medication has side effects. So when I give my heat stress presentation and I have a PowerPoint, I have a whole slide that lists about 4 columns full of medications, and it's everything we take, right? Like Monica said, it's the antihistamines we take when we've got an allergy. It's our blood pressure medication. It's our diabetes medication. It's the GLP-1s. It is antidepressants. It's anti-anxiety medications. You name it. It's on the list of increasing your chances of getting a heat-related illness. So without, like you say, without bringing every individual employee in there and making them tell you what they're taking, you just have to overemphasize to them, guys, girls, listen, if you're on a medication, you probably have an increased chance of getting a heat-related illness today. So just be resilient, be mindful, watch yourselves, have a buddy system in place where you watch your fellow coworker, and if there are any signs of a heat issue, even if it's a mild headache, let us know. And those little things like that, when we just educate at a higher level, I think can do a lot of good.
Good points. Good points. Dr. Heisler, one more thing on we were discussing earlier, you mentioned OSHA, and I know there are several changes that are coming. And we talked about OSHA preparing for an implementation of a new heat stress prevention standard. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, sure. So, OSHA for the past few years has been rolling down the hill this proposed heat standard. It's still rolling down the hill. I checked on it this morning. They just had some informal hearings back in July, and that was the latest step of making it into law. Nobody cares for more regulation, especially our industry. But it looks like the OSHA standard probably is going to take effect either at the end of this year or maybe into next year. Nobody moves fast in the government. I think we all know that. But yeah, they're still rolling out this heat prevention program, which is supposed to give some specific guidance and rules around how to protect the workforce from the heat. I think that we in our region do a great job of this. Probably most of our employers that are in this area do this stuff anyway, right? But as we all know, not every employer protects their workers evenly across the board. So OSHA wants to make sure that they have a standard in place so that these things are standardized and not optional anymore. So there's some good stuff in there. You know, it's always a balance of protection versus feasibility for the employer and for productivity. So I think they're trying to get that balance in place and hear from the job sector as to what would work, what wouldn't work, and hopefully, you know, at the end of the day, come out with something that's effective but also feasible, so we can all go to work and get the job done at the same time.
Right, right. Richard, I know we've spoken before about it too. We've talked, I know y'all have cool down stations, and can you tell me what an effective cool down station's like at your place? I'm sure that's part of the OSHA thing too. And then how the maybe some OSHA changes might affect y'all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A cool down station, you know, is really just an area where someone can go rest, not just standing out in the sun and taking a rest or standing at the water station, right? It's a place where people can go get out of the sun. It's covered. Maybe you got some type of fan. We use without naming a brand, but it's a cooling fan that we use to bring down the temperature in that area. It gives somebody a really good opportunity to get out of that you know, out of that climate, right? And get away from the heat, bring it down, you know, hopefully bring it down about 10 to 15 degrees to where you can cool down, get a rest. And one of the things I think through this process too, it is like what we've talked about, it's a culture shift. You know, I still remember those days where it was a badge of honor. It's like, you know, whether you're playing sports or whatever, and you didn't take a water break. You know, I'm tough. I can do it. We had the same thing in our industry, right? We had these still have some of these old school guys who like give people a hard time about taking water breaks. Ah, whatever. You can do it. You don't need it. No, we've seen a culture shift. We don't see that anymore. It's changed, and we need to support that. So it's been over probably the last 10 years where we've seen a big shift in that culture where it's supported. You're seeing more of these where companies are providing this. We're being proactive. We're not waiting for OSHA to tell us that we have to do this stuff. You'll see it across the board. If you go visit other sites, people are providing this stuff. People are doing it. We're no longer using that tough guy mentality. Oh, I only take 2 water breaks a day. No, we need more. We need more than that. You need those cool down stations. You need those areas where people can get out of the heat, out of that, I mean, especially that direct sunlight, and be able to take that break, rest, shade, hydrate, get back to work when you're ready. And on top of that, we're encouraging it's not just a single person. We want the entire crew to do that as a crew and not just a single person. Because nothing's worth what you don't want to have happen is, you have a crew up on the 3rd or 4th deck, and you have one member who's maybe doesn't realize they're about to have a heat stress moment, and they're trying to go down the stairs and they don't make it down the stairs because they're by themselves. Dr. Heisler brought up the buddy system, but what better way to do that if you encourage the whole crew to take a break at the same time?
I was going to ask that. I love the idea of the crew-based hydration breaks. How do you actually get them to implement it, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things we started with the hydration meter. When we were able to actually do that, when we found somebody who was moderately dehydrated or seriously dehydrated, we didn't just tell that one person to take a break. We actually forced the entire crew to stop, and the entire crew has to go rest, rehydrate, and then come back to work. So that's kind of something that we implemented and we started, and now you can see it where it's more proactive on their own and being able to work that way. It's better when you work as a team and not as an individual.
Absolutely. Monica, what kind of feedback have you heard kind of when you talk about crews and safety managers and changes you've seen even over the last couple of years, maybe for implementing hydration programs and,
Yeah.
obviously good, but
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's funny because, I was a customer of this and the reason why I now work for my company is because I had one of those old school site managers who was like, they can drink from the water hose. And that was not the case when it came down to it. And so here I am, like, screaming for so yes, even in just, 6 years time, there's been such a shift. And just seeing that, and I think again the culture of it, I have, honestly, the people I talk to obviously care about it. I've seen so much more conversations centered around the and I talk about this a lot. It's not, do you need a break? It's, hey, you'll need to take a break, right? You're saying the same thing, but it's this mindset of the human behind it doesn't want to do. They don't want, the new guy on the job site doesn't want to feel like he can't do it. We talk a lot about acclimatizing, the acclimation of your body too, right? And I think if there's one thing I would love to scream from the rooftops, it's almost that in summer we see it because the heat, but as you get into turnaround season and you're bringing all of these crews who may have been on the sofa for the past, summertime, they're not acclimated to the heat, and now they're in FRs working, long hours and new environments, and they've got a time crunch, or they may have been in a completely different part of the country working a turnaround. I think that would be the one big thing that, like, I'm trying to get in front of those crews to educate them. Like, I know it's an outage. I know we have all hands on deck, but let's try to get them prepared for that too. But I think that's the biggest thing, to Richard's point, is incentivizing them and making it like a an entire team type thing. So you're recognizing, okay, like if one of you's not hydrated and y'all are working together, you're probably all in a place where let's sit down, let's prioritize this. So yeah, I mean, I think again, like, I think, if continuing to get in front of them with practical real-time stuff, but the biggest thing I'd love to really work on is the acclimating part of that too, making sure that they're prepared for that as we change seasons.
got it. Richard, I want to go back to a job site thing and maybe, Monica too. I was wondering if you have any examples, positive examples about how safety, prevention and hydration has basically saved people or, gotten some people out of some maybe difficult or tough situations. Have you had something that's gone on, and some examples maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key is like where we've seen the few times and we've seen less of it now that we have the awareness. But when we first implemented the hydration meter, just going back to that, when you actually have someone that's severely dehydrated and they're not recognizing that, they haven't taken a break, well, you're proactively getting them out of harm's way, right? By, even though they're already in that danger zone, but they haven't recognized they're in that danger zone yet. So by having these proactive tools, you're in a sense, really helping them out, and you're helping your site out, you're helping your culture out. Because that's what it's about. It's being that everything, whether it's like she was talking about the, acclimatization, process as well, where, it's not just about the season changes. It's about, an individual who goes on vacation. Maybe they went to Colorado to get out of the heat for a couple of weeks. They come back and now all of a sudden they're back in 100, feels like 112 in a process unit with 95% humidity. That's something that you need to be aware of, and that crew and people talking about it. Even OSHA's got tools. OSHA and NIOSH, they have the heat app, right? That we all use, and we use it with our supervisors. And when they have their toolbox talks, they use that as part of their toolbox talks and look at what the outlook is for that day. Hey, it looks like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock is, maybe even 3 o'clock. We're going to get into the real heat of the day. Maybe let's shift the type of work we're going to be doing for the day and moving it to different. Maybe we could do this at night instead of in day where someone has to wear all this PPE. Those are those proactive things that every one of us can do. And it's really about working with your people and understanding the things that we can do about it to make it better, make a better work, better work environment for everybody.
Great point. Kind of a leadership culture shift in some ways. And I know a team they can't watch each other all the time because they're keeping themselves safe too.
Mhm.
So I get it.
I wanted to just piggyback really quick and tell
Yeah.
you like a real example too, and I'll be quick with it. So we were at a job site, we were giving like, my standard, okay, this is what it looks like, and kind of a lot of echoing everything I've said today. And one of the IH guys who we happen to know, he comes, running in towards the end. He's like, I'm sorry I missed it. And I mean, I looked at him and I was like, he was sweaty and red, and it was in the middle of the summer. And I was like, are you okay? Like, why don't you sit down? And we happened to have the meter. And I mean, I could just see like right there's sweat. And so we took, and he was bad, right? Like so the meter has 4 different levels. It's hydrated, moderately. He was in severely dehydrated mode. And so immediately we were like, sit down, sit down, have, here's some electrolytes in the water, like take that break. But I mean, just his mindset was, I'm sorry I missed it. I was running here, and he was trying to, like, he's like, I just wanted to come say hello. I've headed back out. And I'm like, I don't think you're going anywhere. You're going to sit down. And so it just was for me, because I can talk about this in my sleep because it's so important. And I recognized it visually, and we just happened to have the meter. It's those things. And it's like, nope, sit down and do this before you're seeing Dr. Heisler, So I think that was one of the realest. We'll do it at conferences, and everyone is always surprised to see, oh, but I feel fine. But that was, listen, I just recognized it. We saw it, but I like to think maybe after that, he was like, okay, like that changed, that shifted his mindset. And I got to keep going to, okay, maybe I shouldn't keep going.
That's great points on that. And I was wondering, actually, Dr. Heisler, I hope you don't mind me throwing this out at you. Can you talk a little bit about some of those warning signs to look for? We talked about what to look for in yourself and how you feel, but watching for those warning signs, and even the difference between heat exhaustion, heat stroke, because, we haven't really touched on that. And of course, the hydration and all, but can you help with that?
Yeah, sure. The very first sign of dehydration and heat stress is a headache, and gosh, we get headaches all the time, right? So those oftentimes we overlook them on ourselves, but I always try to emphasize that, look, if you get a headache, something's probably not right. So you need to go get to a shaded area, water, rest until that headache goes away, and let somebody know that you've got a headache. So that's always the first one. But so many people can go from not being heat stressed to severely heat stressed and bypass all of those early signs and symptoms. So there's a wide range of those signs and symptoms, but excessive sweating certainly is a sign that your body is heat stressed. It's trying to cool itself off by sweating. Of course, the flip opposite of that is when you get so heat stressed and dehydrated, your body just stops sweating altogether. It just gives up and says, I ain't got no more. And you stop sweating. And that is the big red flag of things are about to get serious. So sweating excessively, not sweating excessively, but even looking at your buddy that you're working with, if that buddy is drenched in sweat, huffing and puffing, breathing with their mouth open, probably not a good sign for that person. And that's when you should say, hey, let's get to a shaded area. When your body starts to go down the path of really getting heat stressed, your neurological systems go out of whack, right? Because your brain is baking in your head. So if your brain is baking, you don't act right, right? You're going to be kind of delirious, slurring your words. Eyes may be kind of slowing or even rolling. You may be stumbling. that's when you know we probably need to call our medics on site to get them over to my buddy quickly. So, the signs and symptoms can vary all over the place from being very mild to very severe. So, even with OSHA's new proposed standard, they are going to require that your workforce gets that training on signs and symptoms of heat stress. Right now, it's not a rule that you do that. Right. I think most of us do that at least every summer. Right. As we get into the hot seasons, we train our workforce on the signs and symptoms. But now it's just going to make it a law where you don't get an option. You must do that every year and train your workers. So when they experience one of those early signs, that they recognize it and they tell somebody, or if they see it in their fellow coworker, they recognize it and they address it. Because to everybody's point that's been talking, as soon as you witness that or feel that, you need to take it seriously and remove them from that hazard, which is the heat.
Gotcha. Um, on that note, I know I want to leave a little time if anyone has questions. I would like to kind of do a wrap up with the three of you. So, Dr. Heisler, I have a question for you
Yeah.
asking you if you have 30 seconds to talk to every employer and employee what would you tell them about heat stress prevention? 30-second.
Yeah, good question. I would first say that heat is an invisible hazard, right? It's not a hammer that you can hold in your hand and secure it with a lanyard and know it's safe. It's invisible, it's silent, and it can take your life very quickly. So my words of wisdom would be to take it seriously. It doesn't have to be 100 degrees outside for it to kill you. It can be 70 degrees on a cool, breezy October day, and you feel great. And the next thing you know, you're on the ground. So you have to take it seriously. You have to watch for yourself. You have to monitor for your fellow coworkers. And for the employers, I would say, make sure that you're implementing these prevention programs. It's good to say you're doing it, but make sure you're doing it. Make sure you're educating your workers every year constantly as to what they need to be doing to prevent this stuff. And then hopefully you've got a good, successful program.
Thank you very much. Monica, I'd like to go with you on this too and ask, how hard is it to implement one of these programs and to get people start using a little easy technology to help?
I mean, I think again, it goes back to the culture. Like, do you want, if you care about it, and I'll get asked you about the cost, and I'm like, but what does an incident cost you, right? Like, what does an incident cost you? But no, I think, I mean, really to echo what everyone is talking about, I think it's a very practical thing and one of the only things that you can control, right? Like there's so many hazards on a job site that we work to mitigate all of these risks, but you prepare, you fuel your body with things to come to work. It's the most important thing you have, right? So you want to go home to the reasons why you do it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just the big thing, and incentivizing them, like, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Like, you care about your people, you care about your culture. This is an easy, practical approach, and put it in place. Yeah.
That's what I wondered. How easy is it? So thank you very much. And Richard, of course, for you to summarize one or two key cultural practices that make a difference in preventing heat stress, what would they be for you for industry?
Well, I think the key there is your culture. You really need to switch from being a reactive culture to a proactive culture. And that's everything from, like Dr. Heisler said, the training. You shouldn't wait until the summer to talk about it. You shouldn't wait until it's already occurring. You should be talking about this year round, because really the NEP, the OSHA standard is 80 degrees. Well, how many days a year does it get above 80 degrees in Houston? Not just in the summer. And it probably won't be until November before we actually get down below 80 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, we joke about that, but in reality, it's true. You have to, and everything, not just heat stress, but it's everything we talk about, all of your leading indicators versus lagging indicators. It's the proactive versus reactive. put these implement these easy tools that we have now, turn it into more of awareness instead of, oh, I didn't realize I was dehydrated. Well, now and now it's real. But it's also like everyone's talked about, I mean, between Monica and Dr. Heisler, we've had a lot of good information today, but it really comes down to the individuals too, because we can put in place everything. We can put in place all the OSHA stuff. We can put in place all these tools, but it comes down to the worker also coming to work, ready to work, and helping them understand that, are you fit for duty? Did you, I've heard Monica talk about, I've heard her give the training several times, the Sunday fun day. Everybody loves Sunday fun day, but it makes for a bad Monday sometimes. So be prepared for that. What you do the day before affects you tomorrow, and helping your workforce understand that, man, it's great. Go out and have a good time, but understand that you have to be fit for duty the next day when you come to work. Don't be behind the eight ball, where it's just pound a bunch of coffee in the morning and, oh, I'll be okay. I'll, pound 2 cups of coffee and 4 Advils. I'll be good. No, you need to be prepared. You need to be hydrated. And hydration starts the day before. It doesn't start the day of.
I always say coffee, if we're lucky, Richard, they're 99% of the time it's like Red Bulls or Monsters. So
I know. I'm trying to be
yeah, I know.
yeah.
That's a good point. So all there, because it's on employees, it's on leadership, awareness, preparation, and proactive measures, basically all best practices we need to think about. So I appreciate that greatly. I was looking, I'm not sure if we have any questions or if anybody wants to put questions in. Or if y'all have anything else you would like to add, because again, you have so much great knowledge and experience to share with us, and I am greatly appreciative for you taking part in an ECMA webinar.
So,
Yeah.
Dr. Heisler, real quick,
Yeah.
we kind of talked before and we kind of a little bit, but are you seeing anything with like diet trends and things like that, maybe with fasting or keto diets or anything like that that people are doing? Because, it's different today than, because I feel like even the younger generation is doing that, not waiting till they're having medical problems and they're being told they have to lose weight. It's, it's coming from all different age groups.
Yeah, our bodies are only the most healthy when they are at equilibrium, right? When everything is balanced in our bodies, and that's not always easy to do, right? So especially, if you throw your body out of equilibrium by not eating, by eating things that are not healthy, by limiting the carbohydrates, those are things that, while some have great benefits, right? Health benefits overall to help you lose weight and things like that. Just like taking a medication, you're going to have a side effect, and certainly by starving yourself and not having a meal and not having the fuel in your body, that's throwing it out of equilibrium. And every time you throw your body out of its normal steady state, you're going to have a problem, or a potential problem at least, right? And one of those potential problems is an increased risk of being heat intolerant. So absolutely, it's better to have a balanced, nutritious meal in your stomach than not having anything in your stomach. So absolutely, as we see all these diet fads going on and new medications that are great, right? Miracle drugs helping people lose weight that they could never lose before. They also come with risks, and that's not only at home risk, but also risks out in the field, like heat stress for sure.
And I'll jump in too now with that Monica brought up. So with the diets and all too, but with those Red Bulls and Monsters and all those energy and high caffeine filled drinks, what kind of, obviously they're diuretics too. What kind of issues do we need to think about? What do you think, Dr. Heisler or Richard? Or, are you seeing more of
Yeah,
those? I'm sorry.
he could definitely talk from the medical perspective, but I mean, the stuff that you read about them, you know, from high blood pressure to, I mean, any types of things like that. It raises your core temperature too, you know, so you're already raising your core temperature and you're already throwing your body out of balance. But there's a lot of stuff that they put in those that studies are really just now. I mean, they've been around for over 20 years, but there's studies are coming out that long-term effects it's having on people other than just, you know, the acute effects of it from like heat stress, but even long-term effects that you could have, you know, especially with your heart.
I just kind of wondered how
Absolutely.
that came into.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree.
It's funny, Holly, I start like, one of the questions I asked too is, and we talked about what, like, I don't even say like feeding your body. I say fueling your body. But I ask everyone, okay, who here ate breakfast this morning? I mean, we as a society are out, especially here. And this is like, what I see, they're at the gates, 5:30 a.m., right? So they are not eating breakfast, definitely not a balanced breakfast. So after Sunday Fun Day, you come in with no substance. Who here drinks coffee? A lot of hands go up, right? But at those same 6 a.m. meetings, I see these things. So again, it's never mind the health effects, but also when you are fresh off a Sunday Fun Day and you definitely don't have anything in your body, you're, no breakfast and you're loading up on a monster too. Like it just compounds these things and headed out to 100, triple temperature days. So just taking into account those kind of things. And that goes back to the culture, right? Like, what is your job? What does it look like? What are your people coming to work doing or with in their body?
Fantastic. I appreciate y'all so much. I'm just thinking everybody drink your water or grab a Gatorade or some kind of, electrolyte drink, whatever your favorite one is. And just stay hydrated, stay cool. And again, thank you. And if I get any questions here at the end, I'll make sure we send them out to you to get answers and that we will send them out to everyone here.
Great.
So I can give you a few minutes back and just thank you again.
Thank y'all so
you,
much.
Holly.
For hosting, and thank you, Monica, and thank you, Dr. Heisler, for being a part of this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for joining us.